Mic working? You up? Are you up? Okay. This is for John. This is the mic you get to pass around. It's mostly for the recording. Okay. Yeah, so you got to speak loudly. For the group. Thank you for joining another Summer Sunday Kaleidoscope of Faith. Our presentation or our discussion today will focus on expressing our faith in government service. And so we have 4 veterans of the United States government. Actually, a couple are still active, still stuck it out, if you will. And I think that given the Washington environment and the fact that public service is a little different than the private sector in terms of the rules, regulations, the expectations, the culture, and all of that, it would be very helpful for us to spend one of these sessions talking specifically about how our faith impacts our service in government, how our faith it can and is being expressed in various government services. So we have Keith and Caleb and Fran and Richard, I say, representing a wide span of government service. They'll each introduce what they were involved in during their time as government employees, and then talk about some of their faith experiences as a result. As we did last week with Steve's discussion on contemplative worship, you are welcome to interject questions at any time. Speak loudly if you have a question, because John picking it up on the streaming that we are doing. So with that, thank you, Keith. I'll let you introduce the subject, and then the panel can engage.
Okay. Well, let me say a couple things by way of introduction. One being my understanding is that the mics are just for the live stream. In the room, we're relying on lung power. So if you can't hear us, you need to speak up and let us know. The second thing to tell you is that I am only here because we thought for a while that Caleb could not be here. Bob asked me to pinch hit for Caleb, thinking, I believe, that my government service was a lot more extensive than it actually is. We agreed that for the first round, we would just introduce ourselves and talk about what our government service was, and then we'll be passing the baton back and forth over the course of the hour. I'm Keith Fagan. I worked at the Federal Communications Commission as an attorney for 7 years from 1973 to 1980, which was a long time ago. While I was at the commission, I worked in 3 different offices. Lastly, at the litigation division of the Office of General Counsel. And when I left, I was one of several assistant general counsels. After that, I worked for 20 years at ComSat, which had a quasi-governmental function that may be what Bob was thinking of. I might get to that, but based on the conversations we've had, probably not. We had a prep session on Thursday. Talked for a good long time. We worked at this. But after I got back from the meeting, I realized I had actually had another government job that was maybe more interesting in my lawyering, in that when I was, I think between my sophomore and junior years of college, I spent the summer as a substitute rural mail carrier. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. And I'll just sketch my faith journey very briefly. Some of you know this, some of you don't. My father was Catholic, my mother a very observant American Baptist. I went to Baptist Youth Fellowship. When I was in college, I thought very briefly about being a minister. I fell away for about 20 years. I went for a while to an Episcopal church because I got into the music and the incense. And I found my way back to Baptist life when Rita and I became an item. Caleb, tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Keith. For those of you that don't know, my name is Caleb Fong. I did sign up for this, and then I had travel orders that were scheduled to leave today, actually. I thought, great, I don't have to be part of this panel anymore. Well, those travel orders changed, and I'm leaving tomorrow, so darn it, I'm here. Well, I'm here. I thought I might as well do my part to help set this up and share my story as well. I grew up. I was born in Northern California. I grew up in a conservative Christian community. I moved over here in the Northern Virginia area in 2014, and I started government service in late 2019 with the Office of Personnel Management. By early 2020, I moved over to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and some of the highlights of what I do there is that I work I actually do user research, which is actually what I'm supposed to be doing tomorrow, user research on a generative AI intelligence application for analysts to conduct intelligence. I also work as a person that designs AI and data tradecraft for our about 1,000 personnel of data professionals at our agency. That includes training and resources, mentoring, opportunities to grow and develop. And also, finally, I serve as a staff officer for my 400 personnel organization, tracking, managing personnel movement and billets. That includes recruitment, retention, onboarding, training, the whole gamut of hire to retire. I was inspired to join federal service because of my faith imperatives and core values that I've tried to live throughout my life, which is to live morally and ethically, to be a person of character and integrity, to do good things and help people, to do the right thing, and to show kindness and ultimately be like Jesus. And so that led me on my career journey, which I thought perhaps maybe I can find a way to impact the world and make a big difference in the things I do. And so I started off with a big corporation called Apple, thinking that might be one. I transitioned to a small pseudo-Christian company, hoping that I had mission opportunities there. None of those worked, so I vacationed over here to DC one time, and I left inspired. I thought maybe this might be it, join the federal service. So I went home and I applied to some very large, well-known agencies in the area, and awaiting my security clearance adjudication, I joined Northrop Grumman thinking that maybe perhaps as a green badge I can make the same difference. Not the case. But I finally EOD'd, and I've been working at NGA since then, living out these core values and my faith journey there. So that is my story. Thank you.
Thank you. And Caleb, his very intentional path is very different from mine. I had a 43-year career in the federal government, and none of it was planned. In the beginning, I thought I would when I finished school, I thought, well, maybe I'll stay in Atlanta and get a job at the Baptist Home Mission Board, which was there. But my father got ill, and I came home to Arlington to help my mother and my father, and very soon I needed to either leave or get a job. And as it turns out, I got a call for a temporary job on the Hill, and so I started there. And about that time, a new agency was starting up based on a a law that was beefed up because of the Watergate scandal, and there's more of that to come. But it was the Federal Election Commission. And I started there answering phones and with some people in an empty room. And then I took a position in the Public Records Office. Disclosure of campaign finances was a big part of that. And so I worked there for a while, and then I got a job in the audit division, auditing campaign finance reports all over the country, and started taking accounting courses thinking that perhaps I'd be a CPA, okay. And then because I wrote up the audit reports of findings for transmittal to the Office of General Counsel, I was hired as a paralegal in the Office of General Counsel and stayed there for a good many years. Then it was a new agency, and it was full of a lot of idealistic young people. And sort of if you could do it, they let you do it. And I found that I liked that. Then the human resources director of that agency was leaving to start another new agency. Not one, but two new federal agencies that I was in the ground floor of. And I asked if I talked to him about it, and he hired me in human resources. So I began a career in human resources, initially writing about 40 policies so that the Attorney General, Janet Reno, could certify us as a federal agency. Of course, I worked with people who actually knew human resources so that that could get written. But, and in that agency, it was, what Congress did was they took the parole and probation and pretrial functions from the District of Columbia and made them fully federal. And that was quite a learning experience in that how you deal with offenders, how you prevent crime, how you keep stop recidivism. All of that was an incredible learning experience. We'll talk about that some more and how that affected my faith journey. But I was there for a few years, and then at a certain point I wanted to move, so I took a policy position with the U.S. Capitol Police. And that was another learning experience for me. But I retired from there in 2017. So from 1975 to 2017, I was with the federal government. But within that structure, I found creativity. I found ways to reinvent and grow and learn, and appreciated my career. So, yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I hope to have a career as long as they do in the future. I'm probably the youngest here, I would say. For those who don't know me, yeah, well, my name is Richard Thomas-Hua. I am married, obviously, to Pastor Meg. But I guess I started off in government in 2016. So I originally came from New Jersey. I basically went to college, no military, no law enforcement, but I wanted to be law enforcement. And what really inspired me, honestly, unfortunately, was 9/11. And that was, at that point, a turning phrase for me, because I remember sitting in my 5th grade gymnasium and hearing the news of what happened. So from there, that kind of started my whole career, and it started in education. I got a degree in criminal justice, in psychology, and in political science. And then in 2016, I moved here because, as everyone knows, applying for government jobs takes a while. So it took me that time to get my clearance and everything else. But in 2016, I started at an agency called the Pentagon Force Protection Agency. And for short, it stands for PFPA. And what it is, it's the agency that's responsible for the Pentagon. Obviously, the Pentagon is a very massive building with thousands of people. So in it, it required its own agency for the maintenance and security. And in that case, I became a uniformed police officer. So I was there. We call it the streets, which is not really, because it's just like the Pentagon area. But the idea is that I was in uniform from 2016 to about 2022. So everything you could think about being a uniformed police officer, I learned. And then during that time period, it was dealing primarily with what happened within the Pentagon, as well as the areas around it, so Arlington County, et cetera. In 2022, I officially transferred over to the special agent side. So in that case, my agency is one of the few agencies that have both a uniformed police division as well as what they call criminal investigators or special agents. In that regards, I became one because, again, one of the reasons I wanted to do was to investigate, and I wanted to help people in terms of public service, and I couldn't think of doing anything else besides being in uniform or being in a suit. So in this case, I became a special agent in 2022, and then from there, I spent about 2 years there. I recently was at HHS as well, OIG, in 2025, and now I'm currently at the Department of Veteran Affairs as a special agent. So my time in government has only been about 10 years, but I've been to a couple of agencies already, and I think from there, I hope to see what comes next because I truly don't know. So, but yeah, I think from there we'll dive back into the head with Mr.
I think we're going to be handing it back to me. I know that everybody is dying to hear about my summer at the post office, but first you'll have to wait a couple seconds because I warned these folks on Thursday that I'd like to frame my entire discussion around my favorite Bible verse, which is Micah chapter 6, verse 8. I know it's a favorite of a lot of other people as well. He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. That's the Revised Standard Version. The NIV talks about loving mercy rather than kindness, but it's basically the same idea. I actually wasn't familiar with that verse until later in life. When I was going to church with my father, everything was in Latin. It was pre-Vatican II. And in my mom's church, we didn't use the lectionary, and we frankly didn't have a whole lot of truck for the Old Testament. So I didn't get to Micah until later. But I definitely had a faith-based value system, especially from my mother, and I also had a family tradition, which was working in the post office. My grandfather was a rural mail carrier for almost 50 years. My father had a foot route in the post office for about 10 years and then succeeded my grandfather for another 15 or so. I could recite the postal motto by heart, and I won't, only because we don't have a whole lot of time. But one summer, I was a NEPO baby. I was given the chance to do the route so that my grandfather could travel. Now, I don't know if you have ever seen a rural mail carrier in action. When you're driving your own car, as we all did in those days, you're sitting in the passenger seat. You are steering with the left hand. You are working the pedals with the left foot. And you're actually doing the mail with your right, like this. It's totally illegal in any other set of circumstances. And if it's not snowing or icing, it's just wonderful, great fun. And of course, in the summer, there wasn't a whole lot of ice, so I had a great time doing it. I could never get it done as quickly as my father and my grandfather, but I could get through it. I did pretty well. So I'm now going to recommend a book which you may have heard of. The title of it is Mailman. It's by Stephen Starring Grant. He is a man who lost his high-paying consulting job during COVID and had to go to work for the post office because he needed health insurance. He ended up as a rural carrier in the hills and valleys around Blacksburg, where he grew up. And over the course of the book, he came to realize, as I sort of realized in my naive adolescent way, that delivering the mail is a civic good, and if you're thinking about it in religious terms, it's a calling and it's a mission. You're bringing people together, you're building community, it's a good thing. It's also very low status. Well, back when I was doing it, maybe not so much. Certainly when my grandfather had a job in the 30s, and not everybody did. There was more status to it then, but I'm pretty sure that it's a relatively low status job now. And certainly when Stephen Grant had a chance to go back to his consulting a couple years later, he not only did that, he wrote this book and turned it into a bestseller. But my point is, if you're doing the Lord's work or doing something civically responsible, if you're thinking of it in only in secular terms, which is okay too, but there's no such thing as a low status job when you were helping people and building community, and that's one of the things I get out of the walking humbly passage in Micah. In my case, I was driving humbly with my left hand, but same difference, I think. I'm done for now. We're just going to keep tossing it back and forth until we run out of time. So, Caleb.
All right. One of the missions of my agency is that I really ascribe to and really want to align with as much as possible is the humanitarian crisis relief side of it. As you all know, my agency delivers GeoInt, and part of that GeoInt means intelligence regarding Earth matters. And one of the ones that was a personal story to me is, if you remember last year in Southern California, there's a bunch of wildfires that happened, affected the Palisades, the Malibu area with the rich people, and then also just other suburbs, the Eaton fire. Well, I have several childhood friends that were within that fire, like 1 or 2 miles of the actual Eaton fire. And they were given evac orders immediately. Their entire lives were uprooted for safety. And so they left their homes just not knowing whether they'll come back to a house or rubble. And what really inspired me is that, well, my agency helped with providing intelligence to the people on the ground to fight the fire, to make decisions, to make the evac orders. And that's very inspiring. I never thought I could actually make a difference in that way, where it actually not only helped lives of people I don't know, but my personal friends that I grew up with. And that's just one of the many things that my agency does, which really inspires me every day to continue to walk through that door. The earthquake in Venezuela that's going on, agency's part of that, among the different disasters that are going around the world. It's the amazing amount of impact that we can have being in the federal service. You're tied to things that, believe it or not, your small micro decisions can have lasting impacts on what you do. The way you present yourself can influence your coworkers, which can you meet the right people, you can influence policy. I've been in contact with a lot of people throughout the chain and been inspired, and they've been inspired by some of the things I've done, which I found odd, but they did. But these are some of the reasons why I continue to walk through the door and stay at my agency unless I find another calling, because I think, I don't know if there's a higher calling than to do what's right and help people, and that's why I'm there, and that's why I continue to stay there. Yeah.
Well, I had difficulty with this initially because I thought, well, how do I talk about faith in the federal government? We have separation of church and state. It's not like I proselytized or had great conversations about it, but in thinking more about it, I found that there were mission-related activities that relate to my faith or align with my faith values. And also there were personal, on my journey of faith, I feel that I was led somehow when I didn't even know it by the different work that I did. I grew up in a household that felt government was good. It was there to help people. And that if you worked for the government, particularly if you were an elected official, you were a public servant, and make no mistake about it. And that's something that I believed. I came out of the era of Watergate, where I was watching the Watergate hearings during the summer after I graduated, or sometime whenever they were. And when I found myself in this agency where it was set up to counter that in a way, the disclosure and the limits on contributions and so forth. That's a First Amendment issue, I realize, but it was always said that if you have a lot of money, you have more speech maybe than other people do. And so maybe balancing that out helps. But there were a lot of idealistic folks in this agency who felt, especially in the beginning, that we were doing something that needed doing, and that it would be good, for the greater good, especially because of our long national nightmare, as President Ford had called it. So as it turns out, that made me feel like I wanted to be there, that I was doing something useful and important and necessary. And then I went to another agency that I found people were very serious about helping people not have to go back to jail. There was even an inpatient, well, not inpatient, they didn't call it that, but a way where people could get resources so that they could get off drugs, so that they could get help finding work and mentoring them. I don't know that still exists, but I realized that people were very serious about that, not just parole officers, they call them community supervision officers, not just going out and finding people doing something, catching them doing something and sending them to jail, but they knew where their homes were, and they knew how to find people on the street, literally, and work with people so that they didn't have to go back to jail, so that they didn't offend again. And though I was on the administrative side of that, I was very involved in seeing it. Another thing was the culture of the organization was such that when there was a potluck, they prayed before it, and it didn't offend me, and apparently not other people, but that was unusual because I had come from an agency that was more diverse, and the FEC. And I remember the first time at the FEC when we had a holiday party, one of the young women attorneys said, "It's not a holiday party, it's a Christmas party." He said little Jewish children didn't have Santa Claus. And I realized, oh, yeah, I mean, I knew that, but I guess I thought of it as secular. And I realized that other people had, it didn't represent them. And to be thoughtful about that sort of thing, and in a way that maybe I wasn't before. So I'm going back and forth here a little bit, but yes, Bob.
Would you say that your idea of the concept, of the separation of church and state, has it now changed in your mind, having to reflect on everything that you went through to prepare for today?
No, it hasn't changed. I'm still for the separation of church and state.
The definition of what that actually means. Not are you
Oh.
for it or against it, but
I am not the authority. I'll turn that over to who the authorities are. But I mean, even Congress starts with a prayer. Their sessions with a prayer every day. So I just always want to be mindful of that mine is not the only religion, and people tend to think that it's going to be their prayer that's prayed. I heard that somewhere. No, I think to defend that is a high calling. But I realized that agency at the time had a culture that was okay, you know. And it wasn't public; it was inside, you know. But it was public in a sense among the group. And then I'm trying to think about when I went to the Capitol Police. It was very circumspect because they were police, and okay. So I guess the second thing I want to say is about the greater personal sense of my journey of faith that I've seemed to put together in reviewing all of this that I hadn't thought of for decades. I had a childhood that was you had to adjust a lot. You had to. It required a lot of moving about and moving location, and I had to roll with that. And then I ended up in 2 federal agencies where I could make it up as, you know, once I figured out what I could do and what I could offer, I could do it. You know, I was allowed to do it, and that gave me a certain confidence about, you know, even though I was a generalist with an English degree, I was going to be capable of doing whatever came my way, even if it was auditing campaigns. Oh, yes, sir.
Just reflecting on what you're saying, it sounds that your government service enhanced the person you are. It strengthened you.
Absolutely. And I have realized that is God-led. I just have to feel that way because I realize that I'm in another situation now that I cannot control. I don't have a manual. It's unscripted, and I have to figure out a creative way to live my life and to make it good and positive and make sense. And I don't always like that. And I'm in constant conversation with the Lord, and you know, we're working through it. But I really have to use all the entirety of the changes in my life and my career, as it turned out, to make this a positive and worthwhile and meaningful part of my life, era of my life, and Bob's, my husband's life. And though it was not as intentional as I'm so admiring Caleb for being intentional about if it doesn't fit my values and my Christian faith, then I'm changing that. Even though mine was not that intentional, it worked out so that it seems like there's, dare I say, a plan? I don't, I deal with what is, and I'm trying to make that work out. And I would love to hear anybody else's input into that if you have it. So
I just want to.
I'm jumping in again. In a sense, you're bearing testimony to the fact that when you reflect on your life, you have a sense that God has led you all the way.
that's what I'm calling it, yes. I do feel that because I've been plugged in. I believe that God is there. It seems a little more haphazard than maybe I would have liked, but look at how it fits to me. I mean, I can't deny it. So I
Enjoy it.
ooh, wouldn't go there, but I really want to make this phase of life work and have it be meaningful. I'm not the millennial meaningful. They if it's not meaningful, they leave and go somewhere else, right? Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just sorry. That's a stereotype. I'm sorry. I'm a boomer. Okay, but yes, it seems clearer to me that that could be what's at work here, that the Lord has a hand in it. And so I'm going to continue with that and see where it goes. Thanks for letting me share that.
I just wanted to say I am the embodiment of church and state because I am married to Pastor Meg, so literally it counts in that aspect. Sorry, I had to. It's the only joke I have now that I'm a dad, so. Yeah, I just had to work it, so. I guess in my observations when it comes to faith and seeing as I am police, right? And police has a very certain connotation throughout history, right? And what it represents. I think for me, when I touch back on it, that I wanted to join police to serve. I wanted to treat others the way I wanted to be treated because of 9/11. And I focused on that because that was the moment that I realized something terrible had happened when I was younger, right? And in growing up, seeing how the news was talking about how certain people of faith were treated because some extremists took it too far. And for me, I grew up in again, more of a conservative Christian culture. And the idea is that when every Sunday did Bible school, learned, you should be who you are in order to serve the Lord and the public. And then for me personally, I fell off of it because my mom had passed. And for me, learning what it was to be law enforcement growing up in college and everything else, and watching fun shows like NCIS and everything else, you've got this sense like, hey, it's for the greater good. And then when my mom passed, I turned around and said, how can this be for the greater good when someone I loved passed, right? And you can't go around and say, hey, it wasn't God's choice, or it wasn't how it's supposed to be. It's life. It happens, right? But then it shook my faith to say, well, how can I serve the others when I can't even do something good for my family? So I still pursued it, but in my mind, public service was something just to be good. It wasn't a faith-based aspect. It was just, hey, I know I'm good with people. I'm happy to help out people when I can, especially if I see people in distress, right? If you're hurt or if you need help, I'm there because whatever I can do, I can help. Obviously, fast forward a couple years, I already became a police officer, right, in uniform, and then obviously becoming an investigator. I will say my faith was reignited because I met Megan. And it was somebody I said, hey, look, I truly enjoy being with her, right? And obviously we got married. But the idea is that she was the one that said, hey, look, there's something more to just being good for the public. It's also something inside, right? So for me, it was internal look at myself to say, okay, being good isn't good enough. It's being good to myself in a way that reflects who I am faith-wise. And so what you're saying about how it defines a character is 100% the case, right? Because whether or not you're a good character, it shows when you do public service, right? Because public service is vast. You don't have to be police. You can be administrative. You can be intelligence. You can be a mail carrier, right? But you serving the public. Now, take that aspect and apply faith to it. Well, how does it go with the teachings of the Lord, right? And it doesn't even have to be Christian. It can be Muslim, Judaism, Taoism, a number of different faiths, right? But all of them have the same core values in that they represent being good to others. And the idea, what Fran was talking about, the fact that 100% I'm also on the fact that there has to be a separation when it comes to government work. Because unfortunately, a lot of times what I see, especially when it comes to policing, there is an emphasis on putting faith above public service now. It's unfortunate, but it could be the cause of just how history goes, right? Because there's a lot of times in history, especially in the FBI, right? When I was growing up, the FBI was the premier law enforcement agency, which it still is. However, back then, J. Edgar Hoover had this mindset that the only good federal agents were good white Christian men. And they were taught because they would always hire primarily from Boston area. I don't know how they talked around with the accents, but it worked. So it was a case because the idea was that there's no other people around that could be good federal agents or police because they weren't Christian men. It sounds weird, but there's precedent behind it because they said that's the only way it works. Now, in this time and age, diversity sounds like a terrible thing nowadays, but it's true, right? There's no way that I could say I could relate to someone else's culture unless I was part of that culture in the first place, right? And it takes a lot of depth and compassion to learn about different people's culture. And sometimes nowadays in government service that may be taken away just because it's how it is now, right? And I think for us, we strive to do our part in order to bring others into that compassion when I see people saying, hey, I don't think that person should be helped because of their religion or what they represent. No, it's not the case. The idea is that you help those no matter what, right? And the idea is that government service is a direct relation to it. So, yeah, that's my journey. So,
I'd like to add something.
Yeah,
So,
go
for the record, it may seem like I was in control of my fate destiny. Let me establish that now that I was not. A lot of this was chance and circumstance. If I had my way, I probably would have been in government service probably 10 years ago. But it was not. I've only been in there for 6 years, believe it or not. It's not been that long. And there's been a lot of detours along the way. And those detours have, I think, planned by God because he wanted to teach me a lesson to build my character some more before I actually joined the federal service. So yes, this was not architected by me. It was architected by someone higher. And I just made sure that I took my hand off the steering wheel, maybe did a Keith maneuver during that time, and let God be the one that was the one in control. So I wanted to put that for the record.
I would like to hear from you all who have probably had vastly more experience than we about what does any of this resonate with you? Have we gotten at anything about faith in government service that you have a thought about or from your career? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I wouldn't have to share because this really resonates with me. My sister Laura and I, our mother was really the embodiment of everything you're talking about. Forgive me, I'm tearing up a little bit after hearing you guys. She took to heart JFK's "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." And she went to college, studied political science, came to DC and typed resumes. And she's a horrible typist. Laura can tell you, it took her like 4 hours to type her name, like one finger at a time. And she went into agencies and dropped off resumes. I want to work for the government. And didn't get the job she applied for the first one, but the person said, hey, I like you. There's going to be another role and we'll hire you. And she helped write the WIC program. She helped create that and then handed off that, made it a policy. So how many people she fed and took care of just means a lot. So, and what she did here, you guys know, her faith and her public service, they were intertwined. They were not separate.
I don't want to piggyback off of it because it'll make me cry. Well said, Robert. You just asked about observations. I just had a quick observation. In working for I mean, obviously I work for the government, everyone in this area mostly. But in this area, they always say you're executing the mission. And what I find it so interesting that being here at church, we always say we're doing our faith and missions. And so they use the same word for both. And it's just interesting to see how your lives in what you do every day kind of bleeds over into your faith and vice versa, because you're focused on the mission. And now I'm starting to interpret the word mission so much in a different light just because of this discussion today. Thanks, guys.
I had a question real quick, and it's really a question about the church, because this is such a weird church, right? And I always said I would be a weird pastor, and so what's that? It did. No. I've kept this to myself for a while, but I'm hoping you forget by the time I get back from sabbatical that I said this. But no, it is such an unusual church that you get out of this area, and it is far less likely that you have a church like this, that you have blue churches and you have red churches, and that's just what you have. And my question is there something about government service? Is there something about this area that makes a church like this possible in a way that you don't get someplace else? That was just a question I had on my head.
I can start. I think for me, to be honest, I would not want to live here. I can't afford the housing prices right now. So, but where I came from in New Jersey, right, it was very blue. And bringing up education-wise, you're taught to look at both sides. I think the idea of when I moved down here, the first thing I realized is it's a political town, right? For me, New York City was my city. Like, to be honest, I'm still not a fan of D.C. I don't know how some of the streets work. But New York City is a place where if you go, my mind is, hey, I can get pizza at 2 a.m., or I can walk the streets of New York and just meet tons of random people. And for me, that was what it was to be a city, right? You've got all these groups of people coming together, great food, there's places to go. D.C., when I first came here in 2016, it was very charged, right? And it wasn't even the fact of just politics. It was just the sense of like you are entering the United States of America's capital, right? Like there are people here that I can't even tell left and right, but they could be a senator, they could be a representative, they could be the CEO of a contracting company. Nobody knows, right? But I think in this aspect, because government service and faith service come entwined a lot, like Laura's saying about the mission aspect, this church, as being as weird as it is, serves that purpose in that we all understand that, hey, look, we do work of government. Some of us, have clearances, some of us don't. Whatever work we do is pertaining to the greater good. However, in terms of faith, we're all joined together by the fact that we all serve the same mission, right? The mission of being good to others in our aspects of faith. So I think for me, that's where moving here, the difference in this area would be from where I was back home, or even New York City, or somewhere else. So
I'd like to hear from some of you SES or SES types how you presented the mission of your agencies and how your faith was involved in that. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that? I'm not getting takers. Nobody can talk about it.
We're not the NCS people.
No.
SES employees here.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, it doesn't have to be exactly SES, but I'm talking about the upper echelon folks who ran the agencies or the lobbying groups that that were so involved with government.
Hearing none, may I make another reading recommendation? There was a series of articles in the Times right around the 4th of July, sort of unknown founding fathers and founding mothers, One of them was John Leland. It's very interesting because part of it was set up as a graphic novel, and then there was also an article. I will send the link to anybody who wants to see it. But John Leland, who is little known outside Baptist circles, had a direct line to Jefferson and Madison, and is probably as responsible as any single person for the concept of separation of church and state being as much a part of our founding framework as it is. I am not a very good Baptist in many ways. I am hard over on separation of church and state. I think every Baptist should be hard over on church and state. And the fact that they're not is just appalling to me. I'm sorry.
Well, and Keith, I think we need to be clear what we mean by church and state. We do not mean faith and service or faith and something. That's not what church and state represents. Church and state is the organized elements that seek to control the other parts of our lives. And Baptists have always been hard on the separation of church and state, and that's what's created the kind of country we've had. So we need to be clear what we mean by church and state. It is the organized entities that can exert control over other aspects. That's what needs to be separated.
I'd like to ask the panelists if they have seen examples of others in their agency demonstrating their faith. Any specific illustrations of that?
When I first joined my agency, our director had town halls frequently, about once a week, because of COVID. And since we couldn't constitute in the building, we watched him online. He was not shy about talking about his faith, but he talked about it in a way where it was not imposing, nor was it an endorsement, nor was it a way that he's trying to tell others how to live their lives. But you can tell from his character that he was a man of faith through the words he said and the way he prioritized his people. Going back to a comment earlier, he phrased it, and I think it still goes on today, it's people first, mission always. And when it was phrased that way, that's the lens in which our agency focused. We focused on the people, their well-being, but we made sure we accomplished mission in spite of what was happening with COVID. Now that we're kind of quoting out of COVID, and now we have the joke of when someone wants to take time off, we go, mission first, people never. But that we just joke about that. We still ascribe to that statement of people first, mission always.
I guess for me, seeing other people's faith is when it comes to what they used to call prayer rooms, now more interfaith rooms. The idea is that the prayer rooms are interfaith rooms because anybody of faith can use them. And especially because I've had a couple of colleagues who are of the Muslim faith, and they obviously have to pray a certain number of days. That room was allocated for them. Prior to that, I would say that there was nothing for them, right? They had to find some spot either by the ready room or somewhere else to do what they had to, and it kind of got to the point where some people were speaking out saying, hey, maybe they shouldn't be doing that in a room that's designed for just us to get ready, to get, the day's calls and all that, but to build a room for them, because it's not just, say, people of that specific faith, it's people of all faiths who need just a separate room to utilize what they need to do in order to make sure that, their faith needs are being met. And then I guess to piggy off of what you were regarding that question, yes, I completely agree with your definition of it. I can say being in current government now, there has been a lack of it. Right? There have been things that have been emphasized through government where you generally don't do with government. For instance, obviously, if people here in government know, when you're sending out a government email, instead of saying, hey, I don't like that, you say, I believe there's a better solution to that problem, right? Nowadays, though, there are some other agencies that have put certain faith-based writings in government emails, and it is not, in my opinion, the best course, right? Because government is government, right? You are doing work for the people, and everything is discoverable, so I've learned. But the idea is that injecting that aspect in is not clear separation, right? It becomes the melding of the two, and unfortunately, we are seeing a little bit more of that, and the hope is that somewhere down the line we can be able to say, hey, look, let's just treat government as it is, right? It is a pure entity designed for the people, by the people, and religion has a lateral aspect to it, but it does not influence an aspect. So, great. Anybody else?
Other questions that folks might have? I was going to inject, Caleb, just one historical point. On the Hurricane Andrew in 1992 was a real turning point for NGA. That was the time when the CIA, for the first time, said we will release satellite information to help in a natural disaster. And that particular activity in CIA, it took probably about 3 months for us to get that, for that policy to change. But there were 2 or 3 leaders within agency, within CIA that really pushed that. And then ultimately now that satellite information is now available to help in disaster relief. Yes. Other questions? Any comments? I'll let you wrap it up, Keith.
I'd like to, we'll probably go down and just finish off with everything, but, thank you. I just want to say for anyone who is still in government and for people who know other people in government, please keep your heads up, right? I have seen a lot, especially on the ground level, right, on the agent side, a lot of the aspects that are going on, right? We are federal workers. We're doing a job. We also do it not for the pay, obviously, not for the vacation time, not for anything else, but it's a calling, right? It's to serve the public. It's to serve other people besides us, whether it's faith-based or just, hey, I'm doing a good job, I'm a good character. Keep your heads up, right? Because nowadays it feels like federal workers have become somewhat of the enemy, unfortunately, and I don't know why. Nobody's saying that, we're doing wrong. Everybody's here to do a job. Just, again, from my personal experience now, just keep your heads up. It's just the times that it is, but, we all do something to help better everyone else besides just us. So, from my end. So.
Well, I thought that was the end, but thank you, folks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. Great.